All right, everybody. Avatar Cam, we're here. Gonna have a really good morning. Now, today, the topic of discussion will be Azula, right? And we're gonna perhaps get into some pretty controversial territory, but I think we can handle that. So, I know you guys can see what's on screen already. Basically, what we're gonna be talking about is, does Azula deserve redemption? That is what we're talking about today. Right. Yeah. So, basically what I'm gonna be doing is I got the comic Azula and the Spirit Temple on screen. What I'm basically going to be doing is I am gonna be going through this comic and we're gonna be basically commenting on Azula's character as we do it. Now, before we get started, I am gonna have just like a general kind of layout of my thoughts. So basically, hey, what's up, Sammy? What's up? We're talking about Azula today. Basically, it's no secret on my channel that I think that not only does Azula have redeeming qualities, but she deserves to have her own redemption arc and her own redemption story, kind of like Zuko, right? But, and this is a big but, I don't think in the end she should be a good guy like Zuko became, basically. I think that in the end, what redemption means for Azula isn't becoming a good guy and hanging out with Zuko and Aang. What redemption means for Azula is figuring out who she is without Ozai's constant pressure. Making things up with her mother, making things up with Zuko, and making things up with May and Ty Lee. Now, if you've heard me talk about Azula in the past, hey, what's up, Tobe? Or Toebi? I don't know how you pronounce that, but what's up, man? We're basically talking about Azula today. But yeah, like I think when people hear redemption, they think that that means that you have to go from being a bad person to being a good person. No, redemption is like more of a perspective, right? Because like imagine that I used to be a bad person in the past, but I don't know, maybe I found a religion or maybe I found a person or a calling or whatever, and that's what made me a better person, right? You could be like, oh, well, you're not actually a good person because you didn't do X, Y, and Z. But no, in my perspective and in the perspective of people who think the way I think, I would have redeemed myself. So when I'm talking about this, I don't mean she's gonna become Aang. What I mean is basically the four most important people in Azula's life, right? Those are the people that she needs to be redeemed in the eyes of. Think about like basically Anakin Skywalker or Darth Vader in Star Wars, right? In the end, he redeemed himself. Would this stream spoil the Avatar comes? Actually, yes. Let me just say that real quick. This is going to spoil the entire Azula in the Spirit Temple comic. So just know, I mean, you should know that because I literally have elements of that in the thumbnail. But yeah, this will be spoiling that. This will absolutely spoil that. But anyway, let me get back to what I was saying. Basically, if you look at Anakin Skywalker's arc in Star Wars, right? He went down a horrific path where it basically came to the point where even the closest people to him, people like Obi-Wan, people like Padme, kind of lost hope in him. I mean, Padme didn't lose all hope in him. She still saw that there was good in him. But at that point, she was the only person, right? And so later on, obviously, Luke Skywalker, after he learns that his dad used to be a Jedi, and after he starts to learn more about his powers and learn more about the Force, he comes to see. Oh, okay, that's okay. I'm sorry, Sammy, but he comes to see his father in a different light, right? And in the end, right, it's because obviously that somebody believed in him. and that his son was in danger. That in the eyes of Luke Skywalker, his dad redeemed himself. Anakin Skywalker came back and redeemed himself. But he's the only person, right? Like it's not like Leia forgave him for what he did. It's not like the rest of the galaxy forgave Anakin for what he did. But Luke did, right? And Obi-Wan and Yoda did. Because in their eyes and in his own eyes, by throwing the Emperor over that shaft, he had redeemed himself, right? And I think that's what Azula needs, actually. I think Azula needs her own personal arc where she gets to redeem herself. And in my opinion, the way she would do that is doing it through the four people I mentioned: Zuko, Ursa, her mother, and May and Ty Lee. And the reason I say this is because, like, people don't think about this, but Azula really, really does care about those people, right? Like you'll notice, right? The only people that Azula is ever nice to or ever like softens up around and acts like a real human being around at all are May and Ty Lee, Zuko, and her mom. Those are the only characters you can get Azula to be her actual self around. And I say actual self because I think what people don't realize is, yeah, Azula did some unspeakable, irredeemable things, but really deep down, way deeper down than like Zuko, that is not who Azula is, right? The real Azula is a person who is approaching caring about the people around her. She doesn't, but she does have the capacity to, just like Zuko, right? She cared that her mother saw her as a monster and that her mother seemed to favor Zuko. She acted as if she didn't, but she really did care. We saw that in the end, right? She cared about her dad's approval, right? Because the very second that he got to a point where he didn't think he needed Azula anymore, he threw her away exactly like he would throw Zuko away, right? She cared. It messed her up. You can see the difference. She even says, "You can't treat me like this. You can't treat me like Zuko," right? And like in the episode The Beach, we see a lot more. Like when Zuko's going having that really hard time when he was in the family home. Like you can she empathizes with him for a second. Like she doesn't make fun of him in that instance where they're talking. She does not make fun of him. She does not belittle him. What she does do is she's like, "Come on, let's get out of here. This place is depressing." Because even she feels it, right? And I think that's the genius part of that moment is that that'll fly over your head if you're not paying attention. But Azula really does care about some things, and things can get to Azula, right? And here's another thing that I noticed, and I pointed it out in my original video. The only people that Azula ever like hugs or has like normal kind of like familial contact with that we see is May and Ty Lee. Like the first scenes where May and Ty Lee show up, she hugs both of them. And it's not like a ew gross moment. It's like a no, I do care about you. You're my friend. And that's why like when they betrayed her near the end of the show, that's why that was basically like the final nail and well, that's what was that was the first domino in Azula's like breakdown because despite what she did to them, like I know that she was abusing them. I know that she was trying keeping them in line with intimidation. And I'll get into that in a second. But despite the fact that she did that, and this is something that I like about Azula's character, despite the fact that Azula did those things, she obviously still did care about May and Ty Lee. That's why it hurt her so badly when they both chose to betray her. Because not only is it like a dismissal of her worldview that intimidation and fear will keep people in line and will keep people doing what you want them to do, but it's also these are the only people that Azula can be like vulnerable. These are the only people who have known Azula her whole life and have been her friends, right? These are the only friends she has ever had. And Azula is not the kind of person who's capable of making more, right? So for your only friends in the whole wide world, right, to leave you, that would like make someone who's like ego and sense of self is that fragile fall apart. And I do want to say that what May says to Azula is the same thing she thinks her mother thinks of her. Exactly. See, that's the thing. But I want to talk about that. Azula's ego and Azula's worldview is like she's basically walking a razor thin margin between being insane and being right? Because yeah, fear and intimidation does keep people in line. But just like you said, like when it comes down to other emotions and other feelings, other aspects of the human experience, like love, right? Something that Azula really doesn't understand because nobody really shows it to her. She doesn't really receive it, right? Like when May says something like, I love Zuko more than I fear you, Azula kind of snaps. Like you can see her composure kind of fall apart in that moment. And the reason you can see that is because this is Azula's worldview being directly challenged by a force or like an experience that she does not understand. Because, like, let's keep it straight. The only parent that Azula had who would have been capable of showing her love was Ursa, right? And not only did Ursa leave when Azula was a child, but Ursa, even though like she was a pretty sane individual, unlike Ozai, still wasn't very capable of showing Azula love, or at least as much as she needed, because she had like other occupations and because of Ozai, right? Because Ozai is such a crazy person. Just about anything that she might have tried to teach Azula was just going in one ear and out the other, right? And I think that kind of goes into like, the kind of parenting thing where both parents do have to be on the same kind of like plane or else you're going to confuse children. I think Azula was very confused. But I think because she spent more time around her dad and Zuko spent more time around his mother, that made the difference, basically. Now I am gonna bring this to a close, but like I'm just gonna say a couple more points before I get into the comic. But basically, right, Azula needs, I feel, to be like a complete character. I think what she needs to do is she needs to confront her mother. She needs to get into those deep feelings. She needs to understand that her mother actually did love her and she was just not very good at getting it across. She needs to get that. She needs to see May and Ty Lee as more than just tools that she can control through fear. She needs to come to terms with the fact that, yes, these are my best friends in the world. I love these two individuals. They are my only friends and they're the only people who have ever shown any like real kindness to me beyond just doing it because they're afraid of it, right? We played around as kids. We understood each other. We were all royalty or all nobles. We grew up together, right? I think she really does need to come to terms with them and realize that she can be friends with them or she can care about them without having to control them, right? And then the last thing, I think she needs to and she's kind of already did this, but I feel like they need at least one more definitive moment to make it really stick. She needs to like completely let go of like Ozai's whole ideology, and she needs to make it up to Zuko for the pain and like the turmoil that she's been causing in the Fire Nation by trying to make him like a better Fire Lord, right? She needs to abandon that. She needs to like abandon like the entire royal family throne thing, in my opinion. I don't think that Azula can really live with that anymore. She can't really be that because that's Zuko's destiny, right? And she's admitted that in the comics, but what I think she needs to do is instead of just admitting it, she needs to move on because she's still kind of clouded by it. She's still kind of hanging on to it by trying to make Zuko the kind of Fire Lord that she would be, basically. Right? What I think she needs to do is she needs to get over that, and she needs to find her own path in life that has nothing to do with the path that was basically forced upon her by her lineage and by her upbringing. And once she does all of those things, I think that's when Azula can finally, make it to a point where she's redeemed, right? Now, I am gonna flip through the comics a little bit. Now, like this particular comic, I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of it at all. And I'm not gonna like look at all of it. I'm just gonna get to the parts that I want to talk about. I mean, for the most part, and then I'm gonna, obviously go over some more stuff. So I love this image right here of Azula as a little kid. That's why I used it in the thumbnail. I think that's the most adorable thing ever, to be honest. But let's see. Now, one thing I really did like about this comic is the art by Peter Wortman is amazing. Right? I think the art is amazing. Wait, no, don't need to do that. Yeah, okay. So, okay. I need to read it like by hand. I hate how they have this like zooming thing. I'm sorry, guys. It's gonna take me a while to get this right. Toggle full screen. No, that's not what I wanted to do either. It's a good thing that like in post I can change this because this is like a really boring part if you're actually trying to watch this with me. I had it right before. I don't know what's going on. Okay, I got it, but like I need it to be zoomed out. I don't know why it doesn't just like zoom out. Like why are we zoomed all the way in? Whatever. I guess I'll just have to keep going this way. See, this is like basically this is just like Azula being like a basically a terrorist in the Fire Nation. I don't really want to talk about that much because I don't really like that plot. Basically, I think that's a misuse of Azula's character. That's just in my opinion. Like I'm not gonna throw anybody under the bus or like complain too much about that, but that's a part of my of Azula's character that I don't like, and that's why in my review I was kind of very critical of that. And I was critical. I was pretty much very critical of this entire book because I'm not that big a fan of Azula basically like being like, okay, I finally made it work. Okay. I'm not that big a fan of Azula basically being like a terrorist. Like I don't think it goes anywhere, right? But that's not what I wanted to talk about. We'll get to it. So I am just gonna okay, right here, right here. This is an interesting moment, right? All right, so like Azula and her other group of ladies have basically been doing like these terrorist attacks, and if you notice, right? Let me go back. Actually, what happened is one of them actually ended up getting captured. You see right here, right? And so like the other members of Azula's club, they're like, we need to go rescue her because we're human beings and we give a damn about the fact that one of our friends just got captured. And Azula's like, no, we're not doing that. Like she doesn't even hesitate for a second, right? So Azula is still very much steeped in that. Like the only person who cares, who matters, is me, and like it doesn't matter what I have to do. We're doing this my way, kind of like a mentality, and you can see that the other ladies they're not buying this at all. They don't care at all. Like they're like, no, we're gonna go help her. And Azula's like straight up, no, like we need to keep doing what we're doing. She's basically flipping crazy, right? And like you can see the ladies are right here. They're like, she's never gonna change. She's just gonna keep doing this, right? So when she wakes up the next morning, this is hilarious. They dipped. They completely dipped. And like I said, this is one of the things that Azula still hasn't learned that I think is one of the like the cruxes of her becoming a better person. She needs to learn this lesson that you can't just treat people however you feel like, and you can't treat them like tools or like pawns. They will not stay around you, right? This same thing happened with May and Ty Lee, and she didn't understand then, and she still doesn't understand now. So I think the ultimate growth, at least in this department, is Azula learning that if you want people to follow you or you want to have friends or loved ones be around you, you're gonna have to stop treating them like inanimate objects, right? So obviously after that, like she just kind of walks around in the woods until eventually she comes to this weird temple and there's this weird lady, right? I'm not even gonna like trip. Like this lady is like a weird spirit thing. I'm just gonna go into that. So we do see that Azula has like a dream, right? This is the interesting part. Right? She has a dream. You can see it's Lo and Lee, her mentors. So that's why they're there. If you didn't know, yeah, these two are actually her mentors, even though they're not firebenders. And then you see like basically what is Azula's, I guess, ideal version of life. And you can tell it's a dream because you got these two here and they're both dead. And he's in prison and she doesn't know. Yeah, like basically like I guess this is what's supposed to be like her basically her dream, right? Like she's Ozai's favorite kid. She conquered Bossing Say, what she actually did do. She actually killed Aang. She was, actually the Fire Lord. And then there's this guy. A lot of people, I am going to stop for a second because a lot of people were pissed that they, out of like Chan and Long and Ranjan, they chose Ranjan to be here, even though Ranjan's not the person that she liked. It was actually Chan. I don't really, I'll be honest, I don't really care. I mean, she met both of them, and they both share basically one brain cell. So what's the real difference between them anyway? Like I know Azula actually kissed the other one, but who's to say she didn't like both of them? It doesn't really matter that much to me because this isn't about them, right? And then like look, like she in her perfect dream, basically, her mother is saying that she's proud of her, right? So this is like Azula really does want her mother's approval. She kind of has like the opposite thing going on that Zuko had. Like Zuko always had his mother's approval, and he never had Ozai, so he was always trying to get Ozai's approval. Whereas Azula always had Ozai's approval, and she never really had Ursa's, or at least she never thought that she did. So, of course, in her perfect dream version of reality, she wants her mother's approval, basically. And she gets it. But then, we have May and Ty Lee here, and they're telling her, oh, none of this is real, basically, right? So, like, that's when it's revealed that this whole thing is like a really crazy spirit thing. I'm not going to go too into that, but we do have her have like this spirit vision, and we see like it flashes back to, I guess, the moment where Azula first realized that she was like a firebender, I guess. I don't know if this is like the actual moment. So something about this feels kind of weird, and I think it's like that on purpose. Like even with Azula being like a firebender, there's no way that Ozai would ever make this face right here. Now, like Ursa, I don't think Ursa would be like against her being a firebender either. So I do think that this is fake, right? I don't think that things happen this way. This is like a heightened vision of what actually happened. Like what actually happened was probably a lot more mundane than this, right? See, and we have like Ursa like disapproving. I don't think Ursa would really disapprove, but I don't think Ursa would give a crap either. Like, okay, Zuko was a bender too. Like, she doesn't care. I don't think like Ursa was probably never that interested in the bending part of things anyway. So part of this is real. Part of this is probably how she reacted, but not quite. Like, she probably was just like meh. But obviously in Azula's mind, her mother was a lot more critical, right? Yeah, so let's see. Then obviously she has like a weird fight with the lady. I'm not even gonna talk about that. And then Ty Lee comes in and she's not real. What else? And then May's there. And okay, like what some of these characters are saying is interesting. She's like, you can't seriously believe you're the victim here, Azula, right? So I think that that is a really good. Hey, what's up, SpongeBoy King? I think that is a really good. Like, there's some good stuff in there. That's a really good jab at Azula. That's actually completely justified. Is that Azula is victimizing herself in this, right? Whereas, like, she has this very warped and twisted view of what's happening. Like, her relationship with these people, like May, Ty Lee, her mother, she's made them in her mind a lot more hostile than they really were. And the reason why is because, like, Azula's, like, worldview is severely warped, right? Like being the princess and all that, like she's always gotten away with basically being a horrible human being and people still showing her like respect and loyalty and all of that, right? So when you get to people who actually are closer to her than that and those things don't work, like the kind of person that Azula is, she would victimize herself, right? She'd be like, "Oh, these people are conspiring against me," instead of just seeing that no, these people are just human beings, and I'm the one who's committing like the atrocities here. I'm the one who's in the wrong, right? But she's not able to see that. She has like a cognitive dissonance, right? And I think a lot of us know people with these kind of problems, whether we have that one friend or that parent or whoever, right, who can be in the wrong and could be like blatantly doing wrong things and then will still find a way to make it as if everyone else is the one doing it, right? Because that's what she was doing with Ursa. And yeah, Ursa does have a lot of culpability. Like Ursa isn't a saint. But at the same time, Ursa did love Azula, and there are panels and stuff showing that, right? She did care, but it's just like she also would say really messed up stuff right in front of Azula, and she also did spend more time with Zuko. So it is kind of understandable how she could get that warped sense of reality, right? So I'm gonna keep going. And like you can hear her say this, like there's something about you that makes people want to betray you, right? And maybe you're a terrible person who gets what she deserves, right? And that's another thing. Like Azula does deserve for these people to turn on her. Like I'm not gonna sit here and say that Azula isn't a bad person. Azula is a terrible, terrible person. Like Azula is one of the probably one of like in real life, if you knew Azula, she would probably be the worst person in your life, right? So that's why I don't think that she could ever be a good guy, nor does she deserve like something like Zuko went through his arc and he ended up coming out better, right? Like he got to be the Fire Lord and the Avatar's teacher. He got a lot of good stuff out of that, right? Even though he had to struggle a lot, right? I don't think with Azula's redemption, I don't think she deserves that. I think Azula does deserve to like have personal happiness, at least with the people that she cares about that I mentioned before. But outside of that, like I think that she doesn't deserve the respect of anybody else. Right? I don't think Uncle Iroh needs to respect her. I don't think Aang, Katara, Sokka, any of them need to respect her or care about her. I don't think anyone in the world needs to. I think her name. Think about like what she's doing with like the terrorism and all of that, and like the war crimes. I think that her name does deserve to be tarnished, right? I think that she does deserve to be like an embarrassment or a shame or like any of that. She deserves all of that. That is true. But I do think that Azula does deserve to at least have her own personal like epiphany and find her own personal happiness. If that makes sense. I think she's at least owed that. I don't think she's owed anything else above that though. Not she doesn't deserve to be treated well or to be remembered well by anyone else. And I think going into Korra, right? I think actually like a lot of people like are upset that we never got to see Azula again. I think that's actually an excellent choice, and I think they should keep it that way. I think what should have happened is, Azula ended up being like kind of lost to time as and if people know who she is, but they don't really bring her up, and if they do, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, the war criminal princess, disgrace to our nation." Like that's what the Fire Nation history would have to say about Azula, right? And I think the rest of the world would kind of just forget about her as like Zuko kind of healed a lot of the wounds of like the 100-year war, right? And I think that her not showing up in Korra, not even being mentioned, I think that's 100% deserved, and I wouldn't have it any other way. But I'm going to keep going, basically. So, like, we have more like the dream stuff, and then we have, Zuko showing up. Like, I'm not going to go too much into depth for this. It's like you're alone, there's no one to blame but yourself. Yes, yes, I think Azula does need to internalize a lot of this, right? I don't think that she is in this book, and I think that's kind of the problem. She kind of can't because they don't have enough time or they don't have enough stuff to do. But I do agree with this sentiment that like she does need to come to terms that a lot of her like unhappiness and her lot in life is her own fault, right? And you can see her like basically rejecting that in this book, right? Like she attacks the spirit in the end and all of that, and then she just leaves, right? And she doesn't think any of it was real, so she just kind of dismisses it, right? But there is a little growth, right? She sees the camp of the girls that she used to be running with. She sees that they went and they saved the girl who got kidnapped or not or captured, I mean. And but she lets them go. Like she doesn't go back, right? She's like, "Oh, I'm worthy of my leadership." See, that's the problem. Like, I understand how a person like Azula could just go back to that, but I have a couple problems with it. A, I believe that at this point, Azula should have realized that, yeah, this was my fault. Even if she doesn't want to admit it to herself, and I guess you could say that that's happening here, but I don't know. I don't know if there's enough evidence to say that that's what they were going for. I mean, yeah, she didn't go after them, but she also doesn't seem to have quite realized that she was the problem, right? Because she said, and here's why. Here's the problem. She just says that she'll do it again, right? That's what I don't like about the ending of the book. She's like, "Oh, I'll just find new followers." I'm like, so like, if that's actually what you're gonna do, like, if she shows up in the next book and she's doing this again, that means she actually didn't learn anything. So what was the point of this book, right? Like, I feel like at the very least they could have had her at least acknowledge that they got her back and that was a good thing and that she was at least wrong. Like she doesn't have to say that the way she does things is wrong, but she should have at least realized that that means that like her being so cold is the reason why she ended up with no one. I think she should have at least come to terms with that, right? And like I said, I hate the fact that it just kind of implies that she's gonna keep doing this, and I highlighted that in my reviews. Like if she's gonna keep doing this, then this comic kind of is pointless. It kind of is just like all the development that you want to see, but not real, and then in the end, she just kind of ignores it. I do at least appreciate the conversation though. I do appreciate that part. So that's what I feel about Azula in the Spirit Temple. But one other thing that I'm gonna do is basically right. I do want to go over some of the videos that I made specifically about Azula's redemption because I have like a whole ass series on this that I made myself, right? So I do want to show you guys that. Now they are long, so I'm probably not going to play them all, but I am gonna show you guys what I made because I do wish that there was more exposure on there so that I could make more because I stopped making them specifically because they didn't do that great in terms of views, right? But I am gonna show them off a little bit, right? And like in terms of my views while I'm setting this up, in terms of my views, I think you guys pretty much get it at this point. I think she should be redeemed, and obviously I stated why. And I also think this would be good for like the Avatar universe to have characters get redeemed in ways that doesn't just mean that they have a heel turn, right? Like personal redemption stories are really interesting to me. All right, so I am gonna turn it up, just in case you guys can't hear that. Yeah, I don't think you guys can hear that, so let me go back. Let me go back. I want to make sure that you guys can hear it. So I am gonna turn this all the way up. I'm gonna turn myself down. Alright, so let me see if you guys can hear that.
My own mother thought I was a monster. She was right, of course, but it still hurt. Dominate the earth! Make sure he gets your good side.
Azula, we don't speak that way.
How to Redeem Azula Part 2. Azula is such a beautiful character. Well, maybe not physically sometimes, but she is written very well. She's slowly become my favorite character in Avatar, and that's not without its merits.
Alright, I'll go ahead and stop it there. So I just wanted to kind of like show you guys that this video does exist, so that like you guys know basically the plot. I'm gonna let this play though.
And with that
I am
fear,
gonna
she
show like
held the
the
dreaded
basic plot
power
of
to
this is
control
that
anyone.
Azula
But she
comes
met her
back
match
to the
in the face of
Fire
compassion.
Nation.
Her
I'm gonna
friends
let it
and
play.
family, Zuko, Mai, Ty Lee, and Ursa, have refused to fight Azula, leaving her open to her own insecurities. Dangerous, yet defenseless, Azula was left to decide her own fate. What was it Zuko said, she thinks? It's my turn now. Azula takes a moment to collect herself. She stands up, avoids Ursa's glare, and stares directly into Zuko's eyes. You managed to get quite the better of me years back, Zuzu. I did not deserve to be Fire Lord if I was too weak to defeat you. However, recently I have regained my composure and have defeated you, the reigning Fire Lord in glorious Agni Kai. I know that I am not meant to be Fire Lord, but then again, the current Fire Lord remains too soft and too fragile. It's time we set the record straight once and for all. Zuko stares back at Azula dumbfounded. Before he can say anything, Ursa, Mai, and Ty Lee anxiously interject, pleading with Zuko to deny the request. You're in no position to fight, says Ursa. Zuko looks at his mother, Mei and Ty Lee for a second, and then turns his attention back to his sister. 2 weeks, he says solemnly. Zuko assigns royal guards to accompany Azula wherever she goes in the.
Alright, I'm stopping there, but I see that you guys can get the basic premise of this, that I'm actually made my own story about how I would handle Azula being redeemed, right? Now, as you can see, I have the four characters there that I think she should be redeemed in the eyes of. And like, yeah, like I did all of the work for this, like by myself. It was really hard. And like some of it probably looks a little bit wonky. I could definitely do better now. But, this has been one of my most successful series, at least in the past. And it's definitely been one of the ones that people were the most interested in. So I do want anyone who sees this video, I do want you, I'm not gonna show the whole thing. I do want you to at least watch my videos. I do have a whole playlist on my channel devoted to just this because I am very proud of it. And I guess what I'll do, I'll go ahead and I'll play the third one's opening.
I'm sorry it has to end this way, brother.
No, you're not.
Dad's going to kill you.
You're sick.
You're hurting my feelings. You will never rise from the ashes of your shame and humiliation. I am about to celebrate becoming an only child.
You think I'm a monster? No. I love you, Azula.
Previously on Avatar.
Well, look at
All right, so like that was the third one's opening. Like I said, like I used to make these really elaborate openings for the videos too. Because like these were the videos that had the like basically the most production for me and the ones I was the most proud of. I was very proud of these videos as they came out. And like I said, I had to do a whole lot of Photoshop to make this work. So I'm very proud of it in that way too. But I would really like to see these videos pick up because some people, not a lot, but a couple people have asked in the past if I'm going to do like a part four because I've done three official parts and I keep saying no. And I feel really bad because, to be honest, I actually do want to make a part four. I really do. Like, I really want to make a part four, but the reason that I don't is because the third part, as you can see, did not do that great in terms of viewership. Neither did the second part, at least in relation to the first part. And like guys, like the way I basically do videos is I make what's going to be watched, right? Which is the sad part. But like that's how it works with YouTube, right? If people don't want to watch it, there's no point in making it because these videos are extremely hard to make. Like to do every single one of these shots, like that shot right there that I'm very proud of, or that shot that it doesn't look great, but I am proud of, right? It's hard. And it's really, really hard to do that. And so, I would love to continue making these videos. It's just, I don't feel like the support is there, right? Now, maybe if I did streams of me making the video, maybe that would be cool. Maybe people would enjoy that. But in general, these videos do not have they're just too hard to make for too little views. Now, I have thought of going back and basically remastering them, like maybe touching up some of the shots that I don't like that much, and definitely doing a much better job with the audio, right? I could definitely fix the audio in these now because I have much better equipment and much better techniques. So that might be something that I do very soon. I've thought about it, right? Going back, fixing the audio, cutting out some shots, adding some more maybe, and putting the whole series into one video so far. Like I didn't want to do that until I had done them all, until I basically completed the entire thing. But when I was thinking about where this would go, it would need like another 2 or 3 parts, like minimum, to even end it. So I don't really know if that's something I should be worrying about right now. So what I might do, and it basically depends on like how this video does and how people respond to some of these streams and what comments I get, right? I may just remaster them and put them out. And if it does, and if I did that and that video did good, I would definitely be interested in making another one. Because trust me, guys, I want to make another one. I believe that Azula should be redeemed, and I'm not averse to doing the hard work. I'm just averse to doing it for no reason. So, like, if you see this stream or if you see the video I eventually make out of it and you like this, you want more Azula and you want more me making like her redemption arc myself, I will do it. But I need you guys, if you want the part 4 for real, and I've said this to several people, I can't do it unless I know it'll be successful. So I need you guys to leave comments. I need you guys to leave likes. I need you guys to go back to the old videos and like write new comments, or like it more, watch it more, do whatever you have, share it more, right? So that if I do make it, like I have the faith that it'll do good. Like if not for yourself, at least do it for the people who have been begging me for this for literal months now, right? I'm probably gonna end the stream now. Like, not many people showed up, and the people who did couldn't stay here that long. And I do appreciate everyone who did show up, but I basically said just about all I wanted to say in this video, and I still need to edit the last video I did. So this is probably where I'm gonna cut it. But yeah, I as always, I appreciate everyone who does these videos with me. I appreciate everyone who shows up, everyone who comments. I really love doing this. You guys make being a YouTuber fun, if not fulfilling. And yeah, I think that I'm about to leave. So bye guys. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and yeah, Azula should be redeemed.